This is Secret America.
Welcome, everybody. I am Jack Danger along with Jay Gatling, and we have some very special guests for you guys today. It's a special 2-hour episode, and you'll see why in just a moment. But first, real quick, I want to talk about our sponsor, Max Associates. And Jay, as you know, as we've spoken about before, they are an excellent source to get the USA Pride gifts and patriotic apparel, the number one place. I mean, if you're thinking now with the 250th anniversary rolling around, this is the time to show where you stand in America. This and Max Associates has the best products. If you go anywhere else, you're just going to get the generic stuff. But if you go here, you can get specific stuff like, T-shirts that say Americans over illegals, or, this lady loves guns, or I bought a flag that says, support the country you live in or live in the country you support. So, they have a lot of stuff, but they also have the generic stuff too, which is why you want to go here rather than anywhere else, because there's a great deal if you go here that you're not going to get anywhere else. Tell them about it, Jay.
That deal is absolutely fantastic. It is 20% off everything over $20 and free shipping throughout the United States. You can't beat that anywhere. I'm just telling you now. I used to own a T-shirt business, and you said it last night. Well, I don't even know how he's making money, but he is. So he's doing that. That is an amazing deal for an amazing product. Just look it on the poster right there. You got bags, T-shirts, mugs, cell phone covers. Jack says he's got a flag. I saw the flag. It's awesome. I bought my wife one of the shirts. It's great stuff. It comes quickly and top quality. It's the 250th anniversary of the United States this year. There is not a better time to possibly go on this website and get some stuff. Please do it.
Absolutely. So real quick, I want to show everybody the thumbnail for the show, because you know how Eli always makes great thumbnails. So check this out. This is,
Nice.
This is the thumbnail for the show. We got the Secret America, poster in the background, and we got Shawn Johnson wearing the FBI stuff, which is really cool. I think it's pretty cool. And you got Stephen Myers there too. What's unique about this is that you have, the person, one of the principal accomplices to the bank robberies, and then you've got the man, one of the principal people that caught him. So that's what makes this so amazing. So I also want to mention real quick the book by Stephen Myers. This is really good. It's called The Treehouse, the true story of Hollywood, the bank robber. And we're going to talk more about the book in a little while too. So we'll be bringing this up a few times throughout the show, because it's definitely something that you guys are going to want to check out. I mean, it's going to be, it's going to be really good. So tonight on Secret America, we've got one of the wildest pairings we've ever put on the same screen. One man became infamous for pulling off a string of real-life bank robberies so unbelievable they inspired the hit Netflix documentary How to Rob a Bank. And the other is the FBI agent who helped bring the whole thing crashing down. This isn't Hollywood fiction. This is the real story, from the robberies, the disguises, the adrenaline, the manhunt, and the mistakes, to what was really happening behind the scenes that the public never heard. So you got Stephen Myers and the FBI agent Shawn Johnson, who hunted him down together, live, unfiltered, face to face. This is not something that you see every day. That's why this is really, really special. So I want to go ahead and welcome in Stephen Myers and Shawn Johnson. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Really well, really well.
Before we get started, real quick, I gotta ask, are you guys friends? Did you guys come be friends after this whole ordeal?
Yeah, our friendships evolved over the years, but just recently, beginning last year, we actually met up for the first time since 30 years ago when the case went down. So
that is
a lot
awesome.
of interaction since then, and continue doing shows like yours, and I think it's an opportunity for us to tell the story. There's a lot behind the story that wasn't actually told in the Netflix show. I think this forum provides an opportunity to tell the real story, what behind the curtains. So,
Well,
Absolutely.
let me ask you real quick, Shawn. Were you the one that put the cuffs on Stephen?
No.
Not technically.
Not.
So the story begins as Steve and I were talking on a dark and stormy night, like most novels do, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was a dark and
guys wanna go
stormy
ahead
night.
and-
It was when we first met.
Yes.
Physically.
Yeah, you guys are free to go ahead and just, tell the story however
Yeah.
you see fit, and, things that the Netflix documentary didn't show, things that they got wrong.
Well, I'll let Steven start because we wouldn't be sitting here without him.
Well, the fact that we became friends wasn't over the years from the initial capture shootout on the Seattle streets that took place. I knew Shawn Johnson without him knowing that I knew him, and it was through a Seattle Intelligencer newspaper up there that had a 2-page article on us. And this was halfway through our 4.5 years run. And at that point, he became fixated in our heads, in my mind and in Scott's mind. Scott is Hollywood. And we finally had a face that we knew. As I've always said to other people, I said the SPD, the Seattle Police, it was never a problem for us. I mean, it wasn't a problem. It wasn't that they were not a problem, but they were easily calculated and figured out, and we knew how to maneuver with them and around them and through them. Whereas at FBI, we had virtually no knowledge of, although we knew they were always there behind us. And that, for us, especially Scott, was our nemesis. We had not to have the knowledge of who it was. And when he came out in the newspaper, that's when the whole game changed. And we had a deep respect for the man. And it just, over the years, it wasn't as if we were friends or anything like that, but there was a
mutual respect,
mutual synergy,
understanding.
Respect.
Let me ask you, just for people that don't know, this happened from 1992 to 1996, and you robbed, was it 19 banks that you robbed?
19 or 17?
19
Yeah,
total.
and it was about 2.3 million, which today is probably like 15 or 20 million. Total.
It would have been more if the last one would have been successful. It would have been a lot more.
Oh yeah, it would have been a lot. And that whole three bank robbery, I actually, believe it or not, I thought that was pretty ingenious. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, that's a story in of itself.
Oh yeah. So tell me, how did this start? I mean, how did you, for everybody that doesn't know, and by the way, everybody, you got to make sure that you see Netflix's How to Rob a Bank. It is really amazing. Both of these gentlemen are in that documentary. Obviously, it's about these gentlemen, and it's a really great documentary. So tell us, how did you come about wanting to start robbing banks? How did that happen?
This is the first question everyone asks, and it's not as simple as to say it happened this way, because Scott and I were friends long before he started robbing banks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Netflix, it came out that he prior to robbing banks, he was a cook for crystal meth, and he was an excellent. I mean, this was long before Heisinger and Breaking Bad ever came about.
What? Hold on one second, Scott. Steven, when I was watching it, I was like, "This is Breaking Bad." I said, "This is Heisenberg."
Oh, yeah, and the treehouse is all woven into all of this existence. Because the reason I titled the book "The Treehouse" is because without the treehouse, none of this would have taken place. And it was a mythological. It was a haven of symbology. It was a spiritual abode for everybody. But anyway, we had worked together in remodeling and real estate when I was living in Chicago. And initially I met him. I was called out to help renovate a barn he purchased some property south of Olympia, Washington, toward the coast in the sort of foothills of the mountains in that area. And I was sort of a front man to be renovating this as a sort of why the person's there. Well, he'd set up this crystal meth lab in this big old barn, one of these classical American red barns. And that's when I first met him, through my brother, actually. And through that encounter, I was working on the barn doing certain things, but he'd already been there and set up the water, irrigation system and everything that had to be set up for his laboratory. And I went up to the top floor of the barn, and this laboratory looked like something out of Star Wars. And from that moment, this guy was so meticulous, and not fanatic, like a crazy fanatic, but just very analytical, very precise, very clean, sober. And this went on for 2 weeks doing this. And I think I can't remember the exact, but I think it was 180 pounds of crystal meth that he that he had manufactured. I mean, we ended up all helping, and I was totally naive. I mean, this is the first time I ever was introduced into something like this, and I had no idea the laws of drugs because I've never, I didn't use drugs at that time and ever actually. And he, I just had a great respect, and we worked well together. And then after that, things evolved. We started working together in building construction, and I helped him build a tree house. I helped him renovate, and on and on. And to get to the point of what you're asking, how did I finally come to rob a bank? I had a warehouse in Chicago that was my studio, and I lived there because I've been a sculptor most of my life. And so he comes rolling in a hot summer day, and there he is at the front door on the Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago, and banging on the roll-up door. And I run up there. I was in the middle of work, and he's, we hug each other. How's it going? What are you doing here? I didn't know. He just showed up. So we end up going down to an Italian restaurant. This is all in the Netflix. They have that. And by the way, all of these little stories in the Netflix they were all taken from my book because nobody knew about that.
Can you just tell everybody about the treehouse? This is not a regular treehouse that you see.
Let's
no, I just want to, but I want people to get the picture of what this treehouse is.
Yeah. Let's finish the story that you were in real quick.
Okay. And so we go down to the Italian restaurant, and then he's going on and on and on. And he said, he finally says, I've stopped crystal meth. I stopped cooking. He always hated the drug business. He didn't do the actual business part. He handed the material off, the product off to his one contact who did all of the sales and all of the distribution, and he just got paid. And that's all he wanted. He didn't like the drug world. So he quit. This guy got killed, got murdered, and that was the end of it. And he said, now I'm going to rob banks.
Safer job.
His whole childhood, he's always wanted to rob banks. And he'd been studying it for some time after his partner got, eliminated. And he had just robbed the first bank with these two other friends of his, accomplices, that it was a bungled job, which Shawn will get into later. And he asked me, he said, I need you. And I'm going, man, you're crazy. And, I asked him how much he got, and it was, I don't know, 20,000. I said, you're crazy. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. It's not the money. And plus we got to learn more. This is the easiest thing in the world. And there's millions to be made in this. And I go, man, okay. And then, then he starts going on elaborating about the prosthetics, and he wants me to sculpt his prosthetics and really better and more efficient. That's what I was a sculptor most of my life. I said, that was kind of cool to me. I go, yeah, sure. But man, I'm not going to get into robbing banks. I mean, I'm not into that. He says, you don't have to. All you got to do is do that. And then, when I need you for surveillance or to work the radio and the walkie-talkies, and the Motorola's back and forth. And he said, you'll never be in jeopardy. You'll never this. And I said, yeah, I'm okay. There was no moral issue for me robbing a bank. I mean, everybody probably at one time in their life wants to rob a bank. I mean, but this was real life. Yeah. This was real life. And I go, well, okay, if I can help him. And we were close friends, and I didn't want to see him go through the debacle that he had gone through this first one. So then it evolved. I moved from Chicago. I sold my building, and I moved out to Chicago. I started building his front house on the property of 19 acres with the tree house. And the tree house was in the very back in the forest. And up on the road was a small little cottage that he wanted me to work on. And we both actually, rebuilt it, repaired it, and so on.
That tree house was very impressive, I got to say.
Yeah, the tree house, and that morphed over years. There was no design. There was no plan. He was at Evergreen College, just a crazy liberal student. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Typical. And he knew that, that was all the environmentalists and back to the woods and all of that sort of mentality back in those days. And he started building this treehouse on his own. And I mean, it grew and it grew and it grew over the years, and it morphed into this thing that when I first saw it, when I first came out there for this job that I spoke about, going out for his crystal meth thing, I went there, and it was in the evening, late at night, and I had a flashlight, and I go up, and there's lights up in the trees way up there, and I look at this thing, and I go, what on earth is this? I mean, this is just so unbelievable. But it wasn't unbelievable in a design way or in a, really, it was just, he just was this elemental human being. The guy, Skurlock, had this vicious energy in his body and his mind. He forged life as he wanted it, how he wanted it, when he wanted it. And it was everything he did, whether it was having fun, whether it was his women, whether it was whatever it was. He was respectful to people, and he wasn't at times. He was just one of these guys that was well-rounded, well-traveled. But when he did something, he did it all the way.
So you made the prosthetics. You're the one that came up with those disguises.
Yeah, I was the one. I mean, we both did it together, but somebody has to mold your face. You first have
That's
to.
impressive.
You first have to sculpt the things that are going to change his face. So I'd have to sculpt those that fit his face and all that. It's a process. It's a 2 or 3
funny
week process.
Because I always thought if I was going to rob a bank, right? And by the way, I loved Shawn's face when you said everybody's thought about robbing a bank at some point. You should have seen his face.
I didn't see.
I love it.
I don't remember what it was, but
No, but I've always thought that if I were going to rob a bank, doing the prosthetics and the facial thing, I'd probably go in looking like Miss Doubtfire. You know what I mean? Because I thought that's brilliant. An old white lady's who they're going to be looking for. So that's pretty smart, I got to say. Back in the 90s to come up with this, that's smart.
Well, it was inspired by the movie Point Break, correct?
Yeah. Well, the first robbery, which Stephen was involved in, was Scott and Mark and an accomplice. And that was June of 92. It was a Seafirst Bank in Seattle. And it didn't go very well, not at all. And because Mark wore a Ronald Reagan mask, and Scott had some kind of disguise on.
Well, he'd done some half prosthetics. It was bad. Yeah, what he had was bad. Yeah.
So they walk in this bank, and it's on the show, and of course this is the first time they've done it. So there's a big learning curve in robbing banks, right?
Hey, so, is there a way you guys can move the microphone a little closer to you guys? I'm sorry. It's just I want people to be able to hear the whole thing, and it's cutting just a little bit.
Yeah. As I said, there's a big learning curve in robbing banks, and with the president's mask that Mark had on and the whatever disguise that Scott was wearing, and again they went in. This was well before they started going to vaults, so the take wasn't very high, but it was Scott had gone to the bank. Mark comes in afterwards. One said, put everybody on the floor. The other person says, everybody stand up. I mean, it wasn't very well rehearsed. Of course, it was the first experience. And they hadn't really planned their getaway very well either, because Mark had to find a customer that had car keys. They had seen him pull up in the bank before they went in. And he went over to the customer and said, may I have your car keys, sir? And took the keys out of his pocket or he handed them to Mark, and they tried to make their getaway, and the car's not starting well. And they managed to get away, and they bail out of that car and run across a golf course to try and get away. It was just, Keystone Cops.
Keystone Cops. I mean, I laughed when we were in that restaurant in Chicago. I laughed. I said, I don't even know how you even want to think about doing this again. It was just crazy.
And for us, for the FBI and the police, I mean, any given year, Seattle had about 300 bank robberies.
Wow, really?
Which was in the top 5 in the country.
That's
LA was capital of the world.
300 per year, 300 bank robberies.
I think 320 was our max one year. So, a robbery like that really didn't draw our attention because, these guys really didn't know what they're doing. And typically we catch, after 2 or 3 robberies, you'd end up catching them anyway. They'd make a mistake and, that was typical. So at that point in time in June of 92, when this all started, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal for us. But
that makes sense.
It evolved.
But that's why. I mean, actually, that brings me to something I wanted to ask you. So you robbed Stephen. You robbed 19 banks and stayed ahead of the FBI for years. I wanted to ask, what was the single closest moment where you thought, that's it, we're done, but it didn't end up happening?
Well, there was never a point when we said we were done. Well, there was one
like where you were almost caught.
Yeah, it was never almost caught, but there were times when we would drive right in front of the police. Or, when I would have to call him out of the bank to abort, so on and so forth. And one time in Portland, which one I really was upset about, and we had 2 vehicles. His getaway vehicle that he drove away from the bank with was going to be left for the FBI. And I rendezvoused with him in my van that I had, and he got in, and then we were going to drive back to Olympia. Well, the thing is, I had to call him out. This was an interesting bank robbery, very interesting. And it wasn't a debacle, but as he said, as soon as the vault was opened, he'd never seen so much money in his life. From floor to ceiling, it was just stacked with money. And as soon as he got the vault, it was one of these old-time vault doors and big, huge.
Yeah.
And I had to call him out. And so anyway, at that point, I told him before we even started this thing, I said, listen, we've got to get different plates. We can't have 2 California plates because we had purchased, I had these cars brought from California up because we wanted to leave the one with California plates for the FBI so they would be diverted to San Francisco.
And did you guys use, I think I saw where you guys used like women's hair and other stuff that you put in the vehicle to
Sometimes we did, if we were leaving it. Yeah. If we were
to
leaving,
kind of throw them off.
We would put different stuff that would throw them off possibly.
See, back in the 90s, that's really smart. A lot of people, I mean, I have never heard of anybody else thinking of that, especially back then, you know, throwing them off with the hair or the DNA or whatever it is. And then the prosthetics, I gotta say, you know, that's, I mean,
you know, I've got to attribute I would have never done this on my own ever. And it was Scott who was meticulously possessed by, he would read go to forensic libraries, read FBI files on bank robberies. He learned a lot of stuff. He was always, during his cooking period, he knew the laws and what to do and what not to do, how not to get caught. I mean, the things he was doing, buying ephedrine from pharmaceuticals, which you can't do today. I mean, you know, he had people, he infiltrated the psyche of banks, how to do it. And because of that, you know, he was successful.
Yeah, and the first 4 robberies he did were, again, not high profile by any means. And you know, typical bank robber in Seattle would walk in the bank. A disguise would be maybe a baseball cap and sunglasses. That was it, if they wore anything at all. You know, verbal demand or write a demand on a piece of paper. That was what, you know, probably 70% of the bank robberies were like that. You know, we didn't have groups of professionals like these guys were until they showed up.
Yeah, I mean, there's no school of bank robbery. So for us, our biggest successes were our mistakes, because that's where we really learned what to do and what not to do. What mistakes we made, which got us, you know, luckily got us not caught. But, you know, there's all kinds of little details you have. And, you know, going back to what I was saying about these 2 California plates, I told him to get Washington plates on our car that we were driving back, but they were California too. And we came to a stop on the road that we wanted to turn to go back to the highway, back to I-5 to Olympia. And right across the street from us was a cop car looking right at us, which would have turned the opposite direction that we were going if he was going to the bank. He was obviously there on the call. Yeah. And I said, man, don't get up. He's right in front of us. You know, if he sees these California plates, what's the likelihood of 2 California cars within the same neighborhood?
Exactly.
And I said, man, I'll kill you, Scott, for not doing this. You know what I mean? And this is the kind of thing. And, you know, when we got back to Olympia, the cop went to the bank. We went on our way. Everything was fine. But that's something that we got down when we celebrated more from our losses, from our aborts, because it was like, okay, yeah, wow, we did it. We made it. We learned something. Yeah. You know, and we would go back to a restaurant we always frequented in Olympia, and he'd buy a bottle of Dom Perignon, and we'd sit and celebrate, and everything was cool. And then we'd get, you know, once an abort happened, it was lights out. Okay, now we'd always have 3 or 4 banks that were in our pocket to do.
Well, you know, so with the whole thing with the prosthetics and then the leaving the cars behind with the DNA and the hairs and all that stuff, Jay actually has a very interesting question about that.
Yeah, well, as you're going through this process, you're doing your aborts, you're having some success, obviously. You're not getting caught. That's a success in itself, right? Did you look at him as this genius? Obviously a smart guy. But did you ever just think he's not a genius addicted to thrills, but he's actually mentally unraveling? Did you ever think that of him? Or did you just always think of him as this genius who just was in it for the thrill and that's it?
I mean, I never thought of him as a genius like that, but he had a backbone of steel. He had a determination, and whatever drove him, whether it was the cooking, whatever it is, if he would go to the Galapagos, he would go into the ocean and do things that nobody would normally do. He wasn't an Olympic swimmer. He just was daring to build a treehouse. If you could see what he did to have the idea to do that and the will to do it, I mean, you know, it just doesn't happen every day. I can't.
No, the will to do that is very, because that's going to take a lot of work. I remember you guys in the documentary, he said he did it in like 2 weeks or something. Is that what he said? But it actually takes. Then he admitted that it took a lot longer than that.
Years. It was morphed over years.
I know but at first he tried to say he did it in a couple of weeks or a couple of months or something.
Who said that? Who said that?
It was in the documentary. It actually said that.
Scott said that, then he smiled or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
maybe. Yeah. No,
and I'm thinking there's no way he could have built that fast.
No, there was no. Like I said, when I first got there, it was really, really rough. And then after I'd moved out there, then it started improving. I mean, I wasn't the only one that helped him. People would love to go help work for nothing, just to be there. It was an abode. It was a sanctuary for people to come and live and experience. And it was a safe haven. It was a world away from the world.
Yeah, it was actually beautiful. It was a beautiful. Once it was done, it was actually really cool. It looked like, I mean, it was an actual treehouse. People don't know it was actually in a large tree, and it was almost like, I think it was like a 2-story. It looked like a 2-story house. Anyway.
It was more than that. It was three and a half stories, and it was built in seven. It was built between 7 cedars. That was the name of his compound, 7 cedars. And then he had walkways and decks going out, meandering out into the forest. We had outdoor bathrooms, showers, toilet, everything. I mean, it was, people, what can you say? He had all kinds of people up there. He would have lawyers and politicians from Olympia ask him to rent the place for the weekend and stuff like that.
Hey, that would be an awesome Airbnb, right? I think that'd make a great Airbnb.
Did Shawn ever get to go after it was over? Shawn, did you ever get to go to Treehouse to collect evidence or anything like that?
Yes, I did. So the way that transpired was the evening of the shootout. I followed the ambulance to the hospital, hoping to talk to Mark or Steve, because we had a third person that bailed out of the van the night. We didn't know who they were yet. So I let everybody else stay back in the crime scene. I went to the hospital, and Mark was unconscious, but Stephen was conscious. And I started talking to him. I probably spent a couple hours at the hospital with him and asking questions and this and that. We finally got to the point where that Scott Scurlock is Hollywood and lives in Olympia, Washington. So I started looking that up, and Stephen at the time said he lives in the world's biggest treehouse, what I remember saying. And I thought, well, maybe that's the pain medication telling me that, right? The world's biggest treehouse. What is that about? And so through the night, worked on getting search warrants for the house, arrest warrant for Scott. Met up with the tactical team down at his house Thanksgiving morning, about 6 o'clock. And we hit the house and, cleared that. Through the course of the search down there, we found some weapons. We found some guns and about $30,000. Anyway, we cleared the house. Next thing we went to was the barn right behind the house, which is where the makeup studio was, where they put the prosthetics on before they came up to Seattle. So on the makeup studio, everything associated with that, there's a trap door into a lower level of the barn we had to clear out. So then we hit the trees, and we're walking back. How many yards back in the trees was?
I don't know. It was probably 15 acres back.
Yeah, it was a long walk in the trees.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you get to this somewhat of a clearing, and we look up. Here's a treehouse. Here's this structure that Stephen was describing the night before, and 3 stories, about 60, 70 feet up, walkways, ladders, ropes. I mean, it was out of a movie. And my first question was, how the hell are we going to clear this place? Because we didn't know if Scott was back. He could have come back to his house that night, so we had no idea if he was there. But that was my first exposure to the treehouse, when I showed up Thanksgiving morning.
Let me ask you real quick. So when I want to fast forward to the end, because I got to ask a question that was just, that's really on my mind. One, the first one is for Stephen. Did you think that Scott would ever actually kill himself? And Shawn, the thing is, there's a lot of people out there that are not certain that he did. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys, did you think he would do that? Because based on like journal writings and stuff like that, it kind of seemed like a guy that might be a little depressed or whatever it is. But what do you guys think? I mean, did you ever see him killing himself? And Shawn, how did that happen? Because we know he was cornered. So what transpired there?
I mean, this was a man who loved life.
Yeah.
When we would take our hikes up in the Olympic Mountains, that was when we would sort of get to a point of exhaustion, and we'd start speaking about how we were going to do another robbery, how we would do this. And he would always say to me, whatever you do, don't ever let someone else decide your life or death. It's always in your hands. and he always carried a small PPK on his ankle.
Mhm.
And if ever his 9mm was lost or dropped or whatever, he always had that option. He knew that that's what he was going to do if it came.
Is that the gun that was used?
No, his 9mm, his Glock is what
Ah.
he used, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it was.
and we found both the Glock and the PPK in the camper that evening.
Let me ask you, did police use the Glock back then?
Yes.
Yes, departments. I think it varied 6 hours. Glock, Smith and Wessons. It varied.
I did. I did mid-90s. Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Very
And-
interesting stuff.
But he was, his father, when his father saw the body in the autopsy, there was a wound in his leg, which was older looking than the rest of the bullets that were obviously the headshot that he had. The other bullets that the police, riddled in the camper when he was in there. So because there was no way he would have hid out in a camper. He had the jump on them. He could have gotten away. His disguise taken off, go to a cafe or a bar somewhere and just mingled and did what he had to do. So he had to have been injured.
Yeah. After talking to Stephen the last few months, at the time I didn't know he had multiple wounds when we found the body. Of course, one was himself, but
Is that from with the shooting in the back of the vehicle when they were trying to escape?
I believe that he was probably wounded before he bailed out of that van.
You think so?
I think he might have been.
I think,
I don't
listen,
know.
we were ambushed by
Right.
by Michael McGann, the SPD.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just, they shot, we were not even going, the story's so involved. And if you read the
They
book,
tried to say that you raised the rifle
it's
first.
a lie. All of that.
The way he, no,
it's
the
a
way he was
lie.
talking, it seemed, I mean, if you want the God's honest truth from me, the way he was talking, it seemed like he was lying.
No, he's a liar. He was a liar from the very beginning, and he has to lie. There's multiple reasons why he has to lie, and it's not that I have a animosity for a guy shooting me. We knew that that's what the only way they could ever catch us is to kill us, and we knew this. In this last operation, we knew that this was it. It's going to happen because we were dealing with the forensic of. They finally put in the ProNet tags, the tracers, and the money. We knew we had to get rid of that. And there's the backstory of why we actually entertained the idea, because which the book explains, which goes into the story. But they ambush us from behind, which should have never happened. I was driving the van the whole way, and after they'd gone through all the money, we'd gotten rid of one of the tracers, and then Scott suddenly. This was where he unraveled, and he goes, "I want to drive now." I said, "No, man, we can't stop. You can't stop and be stable because they can triangulate you." And I said, "No, we can't." And he kept arguing, and I said, okay, get in the back. And I looked in the back, and there was this pile of chaos. I go, "Oh my God, what'd you guys do?" And then he's sitting up there, and he's taking his prosthetics off in his coat. And I said, "Get out of here. It's raining. Nobody's going to see you. What do you stop for?" Anyway, he was there for 45 seconds or a minute. And I'm yelling at him to get out of there, move. And as soon as he pulled up on the knoll and turned left, then the cops started coming from behind. And he wasn't speeding or anything. And I don't know what he was.
Did you guys fire any shots at all?
Biggins, once they started, Mark Biggins was shot. Mark Biggins was shot first, and he fell flat face down. And I don't know where he was shot, leg, whatever. And then at that point, Scott got out with shotgun, no, with his rifle, because his whole idea was to shoot the engine out of the car, he had bullet piercing bullets, which you don't need for something other than shooting an engine out, which he'd learned from a previous robbery in Chicago years ago, the FBI files. And so he thought that would work. Well, anyway, it jammed. Okay, great. Then he gets back in the vehicle, and then they start shooting at us again, and they shot my left arm off. I mean, they didn't shoot it all, but I thought it was shot off, and it started going off, swerving around in front of my head and everything. And I screamed out what they did. And then he drove a little bit more, and then he got out, and then he shot. Then Biggins, which he told me, Mark, which we lay side by side, lifted his gun up, his 9mm, and shot out the window. And that's when they stopped shooting, is whenever something was happening. I didn't hear it happen. I never knew that. I guess I was in shock after being shot in the arm. And then Scott got out with a shotgun, and I heard one shot go off, but I don't know. And then he jumped in again, and then they shot my other arm. So I had no arms to shoot anybody. And I wasn't there to be doing that. I was a driver. I didn't even have I had a holster on me, but I didn't have a gun. I didn't have it near me. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, for me to say that, it's kind of like, you know, you're robbing a bank. You want to be a tough guy. You want to be this, you want to be that. You know, why wouldn't you have a gun? Why wouldn't you have go out and that was never our methodology. That was never our plan. Our plan was always to abort when tension ever hit, just abort.
Sean, what's your recollection? Or you were the FBI, and you were working with the Seattle police. What's your take on what Stephen just said about how that went down, the official report that was put out?
So, speaking of the van, there were 7 entries, bullet entries into the back of the van, all on the driver's side. The rear window on the passenger side was blown out, and that's probably where Mark had shut his round through. I arrived at the scene just minutes after the shooting. So at the time, our task force was operating under FBI deadly force policy, and it had to be imminent danger to use deadly force. The issue was putting innocent third parties at risk.
Yes.
Also shooting fleeing vehicles, which was against policy. And in my mind, in the show, I said at the end, if I was Mike McGann, I would not have shot in the back of that van that day, because we had no idea whether or not they had taken hostages from the bank. They could have been in the back.
And because of the Tennessee versus Garner case, are you allowed to shoot fleeing felons at that point?
If there's an imminent danger, yes. But
I mean, if they're just trying to get away, but if they've already
getting away that's a different story. I mean, there's a violent crime involved. You're a bank.
Yeah.
But in my mind, you don't. No matter what the circumstance was, you don't shoot into the back of the van.
Yeah.
Not knowing who's in that van.
That makes sense. How did you ID? I got to know. How did you ID them? How did you first find out? I mean, for people that don't know, they had these disguises and everything. How did you find out who they were?
I didn't find out till that evening. The last robbery.
For the last robbery?
Yeah, I had no idea who these people were before that.
Did anybody know their identities?
No, not law enforcement. No.
Oh, wow.
But Sean, you're the one who kind of figured it out when you started timing when they were going to run out of money.
Yeah, somewhere during the course of this, up until a point, the law enforcement response was react to this robbery, react to this robbery. I mean, that's our job. But I'm thinking, well, if reaction's the only thing we're doing, we're not going to accomplish what we need to do here. So we need to be proactive in this investigation. So I went back and reviewed all the robberies up to that point, locations, neighborhoods, streets, time of the day of the week, weather conditions, everything like that, to come up with a proactive response. And also that's when we initiated the tracking devices and the money too. And I supervised the installation of those tracking devices in various vaults and banks in Seattle. So at that point, I made a prediction at one point that they were going to hit January of 96. They had robbed a bank in January 95. They were gone sometimes a few days, sometimes a year. So the pattern wasn't there, but I looked at how much money they were going through. And at that time, we knew at least 2 people involved, either one the outside, Scott inside, or sometimes Scott had Mark come in, at least 2 people. And they were going through approximately $21,000 a month in some form or fashion. So I kind of put that all together in a formula and said, okay, these guys are going to come back one of these 3 days a year from now. And the first day, our task force is out there in surveillance, nothing happened. Second day, we're out there in surveillance, nothing happened. By the third day, people are kind of looking at me like, this is crazy. They're not going to come back just because you predicted it a year ago. I said, whatever you think, I'm going out again today. I went out that day. I was within a mile of the bank they hit up the road that day after a year.
That was very impressive.
When I heard the call, I heard the description of shit. That's how damn. If we had people out there who had followed up with what I wanted to do, we might have caught them that day.
Yeah,
Wasn't this Thanksgiving Eve?
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving Eve. But you told me during
what I predicted. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but you said during the debriefing, you said you asked me my getaway, and I told you the roads and everything. You said you were 2 blocks away from.
Yeah, it was just a couple blocks away.
From our getaway,
right down the street. That was really impressive. I gotta say
that was frustrating as hell, because this was. I mean, Jay, in law enforcement, some cases kind of become your life, right? After a while, and this was bank robberies are unusual because We didn't have a suspect. We had a few clues. Like Steven said, they left some cars behind for us. Robbery, I predicted. I went up the street to the bank. I was the first one there. They located the station wagon. And I went over just to sit in the station wagon because I'm thinking minutes before that, they were here. They were here. And now they're gone again. They got away again. It was so frustrating.
When did it become personal for you, Shawn? When did it become personal? Because eventually it has to. Where you're saying, I got to get these guys. This is consuming my life. And I'm going to win. I need to win. That's
it was. Interaction with Stephen and Mark were professional, but the case was personal. It took on a life of its own. And being in the Bureau for 29 years, I have to say that there's not a case I don't think about more often than this one. Even after this came down, I was, for a while, I was tempted to not retire, but quit the job because I'm thinking it just took a toll on myself, took a toll on my family. Everything is just worth it. And it didn't end as I wanted it to end either. I had no intention that somebody would die in this. I mean, things happen, right? But my family had planned this big celebration when this case came to culmination, right? But what happened with Stephen and Mark, especially what happened with Scott, there was no reason to celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. And then it turned into, professional mode and talking to Stephen and Mark during the plea agreement. But no, it was very, took a heavy toll on us.
Speaking of a heavy toll, I got to ask you, Stephen, tell me, how psychologically exhausting is it to wake up every day knowing the FBI could kick in your door at any moment?
Well, that we never feared.
Really? You never
we
thought
knew
about it?
We knew what they had. If we left them anything, there was never any fear of that. But what the stress is once you walk into this world and you accept it. And my part in all this became, we were like double gonger. There was no longer him and me. It was just, people would think we were brothers when we go into cafes and bars and stuff. But the stress is hard because you can't tell everybody what you do, even though you want to. It's True. Not, especially girlfriends, you have to. But fortunately enough, because we would do an operation, maybe take preparation and finality a month and a half, maybe 2 at the most. Then we would just separate and go our ways. I'd go to where I lived and I worked, I did what I did, our normal life. He did what he did. He traveled, he worked, he did what he did. So there was not this, sitting here, okay, let's go do another one. Let's go, it was not an adrenaline based thing. It was more a meticulous mental progression. And in Scott's mind, and believe me, it became stressful to me because, logically, just it has to come to an end. Yeah. But we wanted the end to be our way. And our whole goal was to come to a finality of taking 3 banks at the same time. And we had prepared for this for over a year and a half, 2 years. He thought about it long before that, but we got enough experience and enough knowledge and enough know-how to be able to do what we needed to do this. We purchased the vehicles we need for it. We purchased the electronics, the transceivers. We were going to jam the radio frequencies of the police frequencies in Seattle.
Did you guys ever think about going to another city or another state,
well,
robbing a bank there and then coming back?
We did in Portland.
2 in Portland.
2 in Portland, but as we did, and he wanted, one time he wanted to do Chicago, but I'm saying the reality of Seattle was, because it's a very liberal city. I don't, at that time I didn't think like that, but I see it now as what it is. And they knew us, and we knew the FBI trained the bank tellers or trained them,
I trained the bank employees out there in security training. Just what to do, what not to do during the course of a robbery.
So they obeyed us. One time, 2 banks we did 3 times, the same banks, and he would go in and he would have one of these hiking nylon bags you could waddle up like that, but it would unfurl like that, And he ran out of space, and then the teller said, "Can I get you another bag, sir?" And he says, "Yeah, but make sure you don't have any tracers in it." I don't want any electronic tracers in it. Sir, we don't have that in our bank. We don't have that in our bank.
They're basically handing you the keys. Here you go.
Yeah,
guys are
that's
back.
smart though. If they're gonna just comply the entire time, then yeah, I can see why you guys would have wanted to stay there. Let me ask you though.
And it's also the logistic of the city. It's hilly.
Yeah,
It's the weather.
and you're more comfortable with that
we're
area. 'Cause
comfortable. We
that
know
area.
it. I mean, I did surveillance in Denver. We did some in Chicago. I didn't want to touch because it's a grid, and
Yeah.
it's a massive kind of, it's a different nature altogether. Midwestern
Yeah, it's like a whole
cities,
different world.
St.
Yeah.
Louis, Kansas City, Chicago, all those places. It's another, and you got to set up. You just don't go in and do it. You got to program all the frequencies. You got to monitor deliveries and pickup and deliveries from armored cars. You got to find the bank. You got to logistically, you got to have a place to go. You can't get hotels because if our MO in Seattle is such, and we do the same thing in Chicago or Kansas City or wherever, they're going to say, well, that's the same MO as these guys in Seattle. And they're going to say, okay, look at the hotels. Look, there's just too many conduits so, Seattle was perfect because they obeyed. As Scott say, they obeyed.
Now, what about the tracers though? At the end, on your last time, the last robbery you guys did, there were tracers, I guess, that they put inside like the $20 bill packs. Did you guys? I mean, I'm assuming you guys didn't have enough time to just like flip through them real quick and see, because there were some that were in there that you guys threw out of the van, I guess, while you were driving.
Yeah. What? Yeah. That's well. Here it took 4 years before they put them in. We had hired a girl to work in the Seafirst Bank for us to give us, all anything that would take place, gave us all the security manuals and all that.
That's smart.
So we could study and all that. We paid her, I think, $30,000 or $40,000, and she would be a spotter for us sometimes as well. But so we knew that she was supposed to tell us, when and if they put the tracers in there. It never happened. We were on one afternoon or one early morning, we were on our way to the Olympic Mountains to go hiking. We stopped to get coffee at some place down there in the peninsula, and we were reading the newspapers. And sure enough, there was a bank robbery in Seattle, one we had done a year or so before. And one of the employees of that bank actually saw how easy it was that Scott went in there and got whatever it was, a couple $100,000 or whatever, and he thought he would do it. Well, he did. He robbed his own bank, and then the journalist or the cop, whoever said that, said, yeah, when we found out who he was because we traced him back to his house. And so he said, oh, okay, they got tracers. And so our friend in the banks confirmed.
But he's an employee of the bank, and he didn't know there were tracers that they put in.
Well, he must not have worked there. He must have been after he quit or something. I don't know
like
that.
a former
I don't have
employee.
that detail, but yeah.
We tried to keep that technology off the media.
Yeah.
We didn't want people to know they're in the banks.
No, it's pretty amazing that you had that technology back then.
Well, they did. LA had it all the time, didn't they?
Like LoJack.
LoJack,
Yeah,
right.
LoJack, yeah.
So I worked with a company out of Texas called ProNet that developed the technology and then supervised the installation of these. And we didn't have enough to cover every bank in Seattle. There were too many.
Yeah.
But logical targets that we thought they might hit, right? That was the plan.
So here's the situation with
You
the
were cutting out
tracers.
there. I couldn't hear the end.
Okay,
Go ahead.
yeah. So go ahead.
So that just trying to find logical targets that would be places to put the tags. And we put them in the vault specifically because at that point, these are all vault takeovers. So I think we put probably 60 banks in Seattle.
Now, was there somebody at each bank that knew which role these tracers were in?
Oh yeah, the managers would have known, and probably the employees. They had to know. Yeah.
Did you guys ever think about telling the manager to tell you where these were?
No, we never. It all happened within a short period. Let me backstory this thing. Okay, when we found out tracers were in there, that stopped us from being able to do 3 banks in a row. There was no way we could logistically do all this, get rid of the tracers. Plus, we didn't know the frequencies of them. We didn't know how to jam them. It wasn't like you had the internet back in those days. So you had to either go somewhere to electronic shop and then it's traceable. Somebody could come in and ask these questions. What's the frequency of these tracers? I mean, they're going to make a phone call, and then you see what I mean? That's the kind of paranoia you have to be aware of. So what I said to Scott, I said, let's do this. One of these small banks in the district that we'd chosen this big bank that we did. instead of the 3 that we had already, programmed ourselves to do. So we decided to do a very large bank. And I said, before we do that, let's take one of these small banks in the same area, the same district, and we get the tracers, just go in and just get the tracers. We don't care about, just we'll de-disguise him. What we did, we put him on a ski mask. So he'd go in there like a normal bank robber. And they wouldn't respond to Hollywood. They would be responding to another bank robber. So we did that, just he and I together. And we were in the van. I was driving and he was in the back. It wasn't that much money. It was maybe $30,000. And he went through it within 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes. He got 3 tracers out. It was just so easy. It was just very easy. And we threw him out, and that was the end of the thing. And so I said, okay, well, we're going to be doing this big one. So we're going to need Mark, because it's just too big. It's going to be too much money involved. And
How much money was that last one in the van?
the last one we got was
$1,080,000.
but there was a lot more left. I mean, he had to, 'cause I had to
Wow.
call him. I had to call him out. because
Yeah, now that's a ton of money now. So
Yeah.
I got to ask you though, Shawn, sitting here and you're listening to the man, one of the men that you chased for years, and talk about the crimes that he committed. Now, obviously, he paid his debt to society, but how does it make you feel to sit there and hear these things, knowing you were chasing this man for a long time?
Well, interesting part of us being together now is we've been sharing stories about things that Stephen knew that I didn't know at the time, and vice versa. So there's so many things that I didn't know at the time, which I wish I would have known. But
Can you give us some examples of those?
Well, I can give one that I showed Stephen a few weeks ago. So I had this 7-page handwritten document, which was entitled Procedures. And it was procedures on how to rob a bank from A to Z. You could pick that thing up and go rob a bank. And I picked it up somewhere during the search of Scott's property, either in the house, the car, or the treehouse, or someplace. So I've had this with me for years, and it's very detailed. And so I took it out. I said, Stephen, does this look familiar to you? He goes, what's that? No, does this look familiar to you? And he says, well, that's my handwriting. Can I see it? I said, sure. I handed it to him, and he started reading it. He goes, I wrote this. Why did I write this? Who would I written this for? Why? Where do you get it? Where did you get it?
I mean, I don't remember writing it. And the only thing I can imagine is that it must have been written down for Mark for the last robbery to tell him how and what to do and what to expect, what we're dealing with. That's the only thing I can imagine, because if it were left in the treehouse, like he said, or in the house, it had to. I don't know why I would do it, but it's an amazing. I mean, I could publish it. And
yes, I would love to get a look at that. I was thinking about what you were talking about, how everybody loves to rob banks. I'd just like to get a sneak peek at that, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I'll take pictures of each page and then I'll forward it to you.
There you go. Yeah.
You have it here still?
Somewhere, yeah.
Okay.
And I told another story too. They left those 2 station wagons behind. The second one we recovered. First one too, I brought the previous owner up to take a look at the car, because it had been purchased about 2 months in advance for cash. And so that's where I had gotten 2 composite sketches also of the purchase of the car, hoping that was our subject, but it was folks that they had hired to buy the cars for them.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I brought him up, and it's anything about this car that's different from when he sold it 2 months ago. He's looking over it, and he says, well, those are not the tires that were on the car when I sold it. Those are new tires. So we didn't have a lot, going for us at that point in time. So I didn't know, but I found out you can trace tires back to where they were purchased from. There's a serial number on a tire. So I did that with the tire manufacturer and found out that tires had been purchased in Tacoma, Washington about 2 months before the robbery. The cars were purchased down there. They're purchasing tires. So I knew at that point in time that somebody out of this crew was operating in that area at least a couple months in advance. That's another thing I shared with Stephen. He had no idea we had traced the tires to a tire shop in Tacoma during the course of this.
That's pretty awesome, I gotta say. Did you serve? I know you were given like 21 years, I think, in 10 months or something like that. Did you serve the entire time? Did you have to serve the entire time?
No, I mean, you get good time. If I'd have served the entire time, I would have gotten out 18 years. But a situation encountered in prison with a CIA agent, and I was years after. I think it was maybe 10 years or 11 years I'd been in. and I got subpoenaed by visits by the FBI, counterintelligence coming. I had no idea what was going on. They kept beat around the bush. They didn't go direct. And, they kept saying, is it about this person, the CIA agent in prison that I'd known? And they said, yes. And I go, well, what do you want me to say? I don't know anything. What did he do? And they wouldn't tell me anything. This was the first encounter. And then maybe a year later, they come to another place that I was at. The same thing happened. And the third time they came, and I'm going, man, I'm tired of this stuff. And then he tells me, here's my card, if you know something. And I go, I don't know what you're asking me. I don't know anything. And then I go into the TV room that evening and watch the news. And there he is, his picture. And he's got his son who he incorporated in prison to come and visit, and gave him biblical verses to smuggle to the Russians in Ceylon and in Cyprus and Argentina, making money, sending them information. Well, I said, man, he used his parent, he used his kid for that. I said, that's pretty tough, because he was there. He was an intelligence agent training foreign people in Eastern Europe and Asia for their work. And then he would that's why his initial arrest was, and then he would turn them over to the Russians, let them know who he had just trained. And so, okay, he's doing this, and I'm going, and they kept pursuing me like, I don't know why. And I finally said, okay, that's screwed up. And the other thing that made me mad, but it didn't really, instigate me to do it, is that I told him when I left, we were cellies, and all the things that he did, he had planned escapes. He wanted me to help him with escapes. All of these different, wild things going on, and all the things he did. When I wrote this book in prison, and I had a typewriter. I had an IBM typewriter in our cell. So he would use the typewriter on the weekends when he was there, and because he worked all week long. And after he used his cassette tape, he would unravel the tape and flush it down the toilet. I mean, he was always doing something clandestinely, because they can't just send post out like normal inmate. It goes to the prison, reviewers.
So wait, you're saying this guy was an inmate? He was a CIA agent.
He was a CIA agent. Yeah.
And he was an inmate.
Inmate.
And he was still, even though he was an inmate, he was still selling information to the Russians
through his son. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I finally, when I heard he did that, and plus he wrote a letter to my daughter, and I told him never to write to my daughter. If you wanted to write to me, have your son send it to my daughter or somebody.
Why did he write to your daughter?
I don't know how I'm doing something, whatever, but that connected the FBI, the counterintelligence to me, I think, is what he's.
Well, now they're going to start, obviously messing with her too, though, if she's right.
Well, no, they never did her, but
they
came to
me,
and plus my profile of my case. And so anyway, I saw that, and I go, okay, that's enough. I'm tired of getting these calls in prison, So I called the agent, and then they flew me out. The federal prosecutor in Portland flew me there because they reincarcerated him. He was in prison in Sheridan, Oregon, and they put him in the hole on a new charge. And so I'm there for 4 days. I go to a grand jury, and I'm telling the stories of what he wanted to do, what he was wanting me to do, because I had a paralegal I was working with in San Francisco, and I could get all of his information, send to her without it being seen by the prison. That's what he wanted me to do. I never did it, but that's what he wanted me to do. And he wanted me, my brother who lived in Italy, and he said, send it, go to the Roman, to the Russian embassy in Rome and deliver this letter. I go, man, the stories were 100.
Was go to the grand jury. Treason charges?
He did, yeah.
I mean, was he brought up? Was he charged with treason?
Yeah, he got another 10 years, I think. After he got an initially 20 years, which he finished, and then he got another 10 years while he was in prison.
So how long did you end up actually serving then?
I think I ended up serving about 14.
Wow, that's an incredibly long
time.
Yeah,
it's a lifetime, but it was a creative lifetime. I mean, people look at it. I mean, it's an ugly, it's the good, bad, and the ugly. I mean, there's probably 3% of geniuses in there, really good people. I can say that. And I've met some really cool people that I would never meet on the outside world. And but it's an ugly environment, but you learn a lot, which you would never learn. The outside world is the same as prison, only it's filtered. It's diluted.
So what was the difference though when you first went in to when you came out? What was the biggest difference you noticed in the world?
The crackheads were becoming less, and the
Yeah.
pedophiles were becoming more. So the federal
Yeah.
system makes money off certain crimes at certain times in history. So the crackheads, because they got all this government, whatever, judicial release or something, I don't know. A lot of them got out, and then they started putting in all the pedophiles. So, it goes, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You just have to sort of do what you do and hope you don't, bump heads. You try not to bump heads, but
Let me ask you,
there's good
Stephen.
things. There was positive things.
So,
Mhm.
Stephen, I have one for you and one for you. Well, Shawn, actually, you first. What you made the big break in the case because you put together this timeline of when they
Right.
were going to run out of money. That was in the documentary. What was the biggest break? Was there another big break or something else that helped you that wasn't in the documentary that led you to come closer to catching them? And then after you answer that, for Stephen, you guys have families. How did you keep it from them, or did they know? But I'll listen to Shawn first.
Well, as far as breaks in the investigation, again, recovering two vehicles, predicting when they would come back after a year, but we really didn't have enough. And as Stephen's talking about the robbery they did before the last one was about a week before when Scott wore the ski mask and they went in specifically to get the ProNet tags to see how they worked, how to defeat them. I was thinking that if they had stopped before that last robbery, we may have never caught them. I don't
Wow.
think we would have because
Wow.
we didn't have
Mhm.
enough. And so I was hoping in my strategy that, again, being proactive, but also the fact that, and I didn't know Scott, but maybe the greed, the adrenaline rush, the challenge, how is he going to stop?
Mhm.
And that was what I was counting on was they're going to come back at some point in time, but this time we're going to be ready for them, right? Setting up surveillance in the banks, having electronic tracers, in the money in the vaults. So
Yeah.
it was just a waiting game to some degree, hoping that they'd make a mistake, but also hoping they'd come back. Sounds silly, but another bank robbery would help us.
Yeah,
That's-
makes sense.
Yeah, I was, for me, that's one of the questions as far as keeping a lifestyle away from family and friends and people you love and so on was the hardest part of, it's a split personality, but because of my life, I mean, as an artist and a sculptor and, builder, I was always doing that. So it wasn't, I would say I'm going on a vacation for 3 or 4 weeks and I wouldn't contact them in a month. When we were in operation mode, surveillance and planning, we never contacted family or friends.
Did they ask where you got all the money from?
Oh, I didn't show the money. I mean, nobody, you don't go around, having parties. No,
Well,
I
no,
mean,
no, I just meant, like,
listen,
did you have
Scott was not opulent. He drove a
Yeah.
1989 van. He never changed. He didn't have a lot of clothes. His house, he was always in debt. He always used credit cards.
What was the
and
money spent on then?
life. He spent it on life, on travel, on things. I mean, we bought property. We bought,
So was any of it laundered, like his money?
every robbery I laundered. I'd go to Vegas and Reno and I laundered every time. Sometimes he would help, but usually not. And it was always me. I would spend 3 or 4 days during the football and basketball season is the best time to do all of that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So,
A lot of people romanticize, like bank robberies and what you would do with the money. Did the lifestyle actually live up to what people, would romanticize, what they'd think about, what they'd imagine in films? Does it live up to that, or is it not as great?
It severs you from. It makes you look at the world in a different light. It makes you look at the world that you're no longer a part of it, but you're there in a way, and you have a knowledge that other people don't have, and it gives you a strength because you're able to leave the system, and the system is something that does exactly what we did, only a million times more. And
That's right.
And you have to, as I always said, when you go after the jugular vein of their vitality, of their livelihood, that is more vicious to the system than rape, murder, incest, pedophilia, because they're all that anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole of Congress should be in federal prison. And you know what I mean? And, here we are. We're small. This is small compared to these people in Congress. I mean, look at it. I mean, they're multi-millionaires on $150,000 a year. Come on. I mean,
Well, that was also
what
part
kind
of
of
this-
brain dead people? I mean, laundering money is so obviously with all of this, the fraud that's,
But there was
That,
also
the
part of this.
Ukraine funding and everything. It was crazy.
And I think Scott was playing with it sometimes too, because one of the robberies he was wearing it was Harold's Club, which was a casino in Reno.
Mhm.
Thing.
Yeah, well, that's
He
right.
wore it in a robbery,
Yeah.
and they're going down laundering money in
Money
that
down
city.
there.
Another robbery, you wore a dare hat,
Oh wow! No,
so-
the keep kids off drugs program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He wore it- I mean, it was a game to him at some degree, I guess.
Well,
right?
it was also the dare thing was partly he wanted to make them at least assume that it could be a cop robbing the bank.
There was
That's
some,
not a,
yeah,
yeah.
some
And
had
also
not a
the
terrible
Glock.
idea.
He carried his Glock in a way that only a professional would.
index the trigger finger.
That's pretty smart. I got to tell you, a lot of the things that you guys did to throw them off or to divert attention were pretty ingenious at the time.
I mean, it was solid, and we made mistakes, but the last robbery, it wasn't a mistake; it was an indulgence, and because of our successes, we felt we could do it, and because of that small robbery a week before this one, the big one, we felt okay, we can do it. The thing we missed is that they're only in the $20 bills, and all we had to do in the last robbery is not take $20 bills.
That's
They're
true.
only-
That's true.
They're not
too.
going to waste the $200 bills and two $50 bills. They're only going to waste two $20 bills.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever think about stopping at some point? Like what you were.
This
done.
was the last. I told him, I said, "This is it, man. I'm done." I was going to sell my place in New Orleans, and then I was moving to Europe, going back to Europe.
That's how it always. That's usually how.
But
it
I
happens,
was saying tonight to Shawn and his wife, I was saying, I had before this took place, months before, I was saying, man, if we get this over with, I think I'm going to come back to Shawn after 5 years after the statute of limitation and tell him who I am. I
like
really
that.
would have done that. I really would have done it because
I
it was
like
in
that.
my mind back then. Because, like I said, when I saw that article in the Seattle Intelligencer, something clicked. Something clicked
And
that.
one other point on that article, again, trying to be proactive with the media. Sometimes media's your friend, sometimes they're not, right?
Yeah.
Law enforcement. But this article came out. It's a picture of me with one of the agents in the office. In the background were all these surveillance photographs of the various robberies that Hollywood had committed.
Mhm.
I was holding up some pictures, and towards the end of the article, I mentioned that during the first robbery, Scott actually used the name Mark inside the bank, so we knew somebody
Yeah.
name was
I
Mark.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So hoping somebody would call in, and we used to have a program, maybe still exists, the Thursday edition of the Seattle paper. In the entertainment section, we'd post surveillance photographs of
Oh, really?
subjects.
Wow.
It's called Roar Rat on a Rat.
I
Good
like
name,
that.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we got, there was $1,000 reward, led to an indictment. Somebody called in, but I knew it probably was going to work. But I put pictures of Scott of Hollywood in the paper. Of course, he had this elaborate disguise on, but what the hell? And I had folks calling in to me saying, "I know who that is." I go, "How do you know that? Well, he looks just like that." I said, "No, he doesn't."
Did you
look
ever
like
get a
that."
tip of one of the correct names? And
No.
then you went back and said, wow, that was actually
Well,
correct.
Mark, he had Mark.
I had Mark.
Yeah, you had Mark.
I mean,
and that
like,
was his
did
name.
someone ever call in and say, hey, you know what? I think that's Stephen Meyer. I think
No.
that's Scott. Nobody
Never.
ever called in and said that?
Never. But when that article came out, and when Stephen found it at the treehouse reading the paper, name's Mark, you got to tell that story.
Yeah, when I was in the treehouse, I mean, I was in the front house, and I went. It was early in the morning, and I went to get coffee in the paper because we always got newspapers every morning to read, just any news, any bank robberies, whatever. And I opened the paper, and I go, "Oh my God, there it is!" And this man sitting on the top of his desk, leaning on it, and the billboard behind him with Scott's photographs. And then it was a 2-page article, and I read the whole thing. I go, man, and then I saw Mark, and he yells out, "Mark!" as he comes. I go, oh. And you got to understand, Mark is 6'4". His voice it's dominating. It's powerful. In
So he's
Olympia, it's-
recognizable.
yeah, and in Olympia, a guy like that, everybody knew him. He was a bar hopper. He was one of these bar flies. Everybody knew him. He was a great guy, great personality. Could drink you to
Did
the end of the
anybody,
world.
tip his last name to you guys?
No.
No? Because I was wondering
we
if somebody-
we hired people off and on different things to purchase vehicles that knew what we were doing, but because they got so much money from us
Mhm.
and they were friends, there's a lot of people who knew, I mean, not a lot of people, but people who did know that they wouldn't have entertained the idea of informing because first of all, they made money and they didn't have a problem with it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they probably thought, well, if I did, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get indicted or whatever, but it just wasn't in the mindset at that time. It wasn't like you go around talking about it. Everybody knew his girlfriends. They knew he was doing something, but they all thought it was marijuana or whatever he told them.
That article, that's the first time that the name Hollywood came out.
Really?
Because we gave our bank robbers names. We didn't know their real names.
Monikers.
Monikers, right? And with the makeup he had on, we called him Hollywood. That's when Scott found out about that too.
And then Scott, I would say, man, that's a great name. It's perfect. He says, don't ever say that. Don't even say it to me while we're alone. Don't say it because I don't want it to slip out. And
That's
I go,
true.
okay, yeah.
That makes sense. But let me ask you, Shawn, did you ever plant like fake stories in the media to try to, maybe coax them out or kind of maybe make them think you didn't have something when you did, or maybe make them think you did have something when you didn't?
I would say no. I mean, we weren't allowed to really put out fake stories. And I was just hoping that somebody in the inner circle would at some point come forward. And that's why we progressed from that $1,000 reward up to a $50,000 reward, which was put on by the banks, put up the money, hoping that 50,000 would maybe convince somebody, hey, this is worth the money to call in and provide us some information. Of course, that didn't happen either, So their circle is very small. And as Stephen said, there was folks on the periphery, but, for whatever reason, they didn't feel like that was something they would be willing to do.
They were loyal. They were
Or
loyal.
loyal.
Yeah,
I guess.
These were normal citizens. They had little businesses. They had salons. They had organic food distribution. Just normal. The girl that we hired to work in the bank, she was a previous boyfriend and girlfriend, the two of them together years ago when they were in college, and they ended up being friends. They were no longer lovers any longer, and she was dedicated. She loved us both. I mean, we were all close, the three of us. Her name, we called her Mustang. Her first name was Sally. I mean, everything is in
That's cool. Sally Mustang.
Yeah, so her code name was Mustang, but she was she did sometimes when the entrance and exits of the police patrols where they would come in on a call or have to leave, I couldn't cover everything. If it was just one entrance and exit, I could cover it. But if we had two or three, we had to hire other people to sit in a car with a radio to see, we gave them code words to say. They would call me, then I would call Scott if it was a call out with police. So we would hire. Then I think we gave them 5,000 or 10,000 just to sit up there for 5-10 minutes or whatever.
Wow, that's amazing. We got two questions real quick from the audience. One, Raina says, "Are you still married?" And then the other one, Deborah says, "Did you ever have to pay anyone off, like specifically like law enforcement or anything like that?"
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not married. I'm not married. No, it's been years.
And did you ever have to pay anyone off?
No, we never had to pay anyone off. No, other than people we hired to do work for us. I mean, we paid the person, whomever he was. I never was privy to it, but we had, when that article came out on Shawn, we had to pay this guy to do surveillance on him for a couple of weeks to find if we could get some smut or something on him.
Did surveillance on Shawn? That's pretty
good.
Yeah. Well, but back in the day, I didn't even suspect that, but my wife had the suspicion about people watching us, and I'm going, well, I don't know. I don't think so. It actually was true.
It was
Scott hired somebody to see something I was doing wrong they could use down the road. Of course,
that's true.
I did nothing but go home, go to work, go home, go to work. I didn't. That was it. Right?
So you didn't get anything you could use against him. Dang, man.
The wives, they always have those spidey senses. The wives, they always have.
Yeah. I know.
So
one second, Jack, real quick. So right now, like what I'm seeing is this couldn't happen today, in my opinion. Like what you guys did for that long, I don't think you can get away with it today because there's cameras everywhere, and they would have had so many more clues just by tracking and seeing
the forensics alone.
Yeah, forget it, even that. But just the amount of surveillance that's everywhere. I mean, Shawn, your opinion, what do you think? Is this something we'll never see again to this extent for this amount of time, for this amount of money?
I agree. With the technology they have now, facial recognition, advanced cameras. Back in the day, we had 35 millimeter film, and half the time it didn't work, or half the time they weren't serviced, or there wasn't any film in the canister.
And now everybody has a cell phone, and then there's the
everybody in the
flock
bank has cell
cameras.
phones. I personally, I don't see how this could happen today.
No,
just
not
couldn't
to
happen.
that, not with 19 bank robberies and getting
No.
away. That's what makes it so impressive too. It wasn't just 5 or 10. It was 19, at least like 19 bank robberies. That's impressive.
I mean, the first 4 or 5, like we say, they were small takes, but it was a learning curve. And the learning curve, you have to learn, you have to feel, and it took him guts to go to the vault. It was also a electronic apprehension he had, not knowing if he could receive my call if he was in the vault, but that was a moot point, really. But people say that, you say that everything is more difficult, but at the same time, I would say it's more why it could never happen, because it takes such a mental transition in will. And today it's too easy to make money elsewhere in a way that, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, if you want to go corrupt, it's too easy to make money corrupted without doing something like that. I mean, it takes a spine of steel to do what he did. And it's you have to be theatrical. You have to be a chameleon. You have to be kind, and you have to be forceful at the same time.
Well, they also have to have a Stephen Myers that can help them with the prosthetics and stuff.
You need all of that, and you need to have two. We were like friends. We didn't really travel on trips together, but except maybe Vegas. Sometimes we go, but we never overdid being together because it was too. We didn't want that possibility to make. You see what I'm saying? Because at the point when they realized there was somebody outside, that was the time that I became more concerned for myself, because I knew that if he ever fell, then I was going to fall too, because we were just too forensically connected.
Yeah, and we had witness statements at a couple of the banks where they overheard radio communications coming in to Scott, right? And one of the surveillance photographs, his coat was a bit back, and you could see the radio on his belt. So we knew, again, somebody was on the radio outside, probably, monitoring the police frequencies.
Yeah. So, at that point, we were like melded together, and it was going to end when it was going to end. And, his goal was doing this he wanted to show them we can do what we want to do. And that was like a psychological victory for him.
We have a question real quick from the audience, from Jim Bob. He said, what's the craziest thing you ever did with the money?
Craziest thing I ever did with the money. Oh, when I bought my home in New Orleans, this is a beautiful story. I did a no documentation loan, and we went to the closing and did all the paperwork, and the woman that was filling it out at the bank and everything, she says, yeah, with these no doc loans, back then it was pretty frequent. People did no doc loans for real estate. She said, God, it's just so you could go rob a bank yesterday. You could go rob a bank and come in and buy a house today. And I go, God, really? I'm just like, I don't know. There was nothing really crazy. I mean, we laundered money. We laundered money in Vegas, but I was not. I gambled, but not big. Scott gambled, but I would say nothing crazy.
No, and in my opinion, back then, they were going through again approximately $21,000 a month, so they weren't saving money, and you expected them back when that ran out, right? There's always suspicion. Did you find any money at the treehouse when you did the search warrant? And I said, well, we found 30 grand, which pretty much was
that one. Yeah.
Stephen's take from the last robbery before when they did the Pronet thing. But, hidden cash, buried money, that didn't exist. It wasn't there.
The only thing that did exist is that he had one of his girlfriends worked for the Swiss bank in Basel, Switzerland, and he would send all of his money through her. Once it was laundered, he would give her the money because it was all cash. And however they did it, she maneuvered it, got it in, and she had a number to count for them. And so that's why he would run up his credit cards. It was part of he would say, look, if I ever get investigated, if they're onto me for something, and they see I'm $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 in debt, and I'm driving a 1989 van, and I live in this little cottage, they're not going to think I'm robbing banks for all this money. And then he would rob a bank, pay the credit cards up, and do it again. He said, yeah, if I fall, if I get killed or whatever, I'll have robbed them twice, with the credit cards. I mean, that's pretty crazy too.
No, he was like you were talking about how he would. I was watching a documentary, and there were times where he was back there in that vault,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there was really nobody controlling the front of the bank.
No, because the psychology of this is that people are more obedient. I mean, if you use that word obedient, that sounds strong. I don't mean it like a dog or anything, but they're more persuaded to obey when you're not showing fear. And when you show control and when you use certain words that only a person would know, technically know within the bank. I can't specify exactly. He would reiterate to me after a robbery. I said, how'd it go? What'd you say? Da, da, da.
Wasn't that girl
And-
giving you guys information? The girl that was with you giving you information?
Yeah,
What-
she gave. Yeah, plus we had her security documents. I mean, they're still buried on the property. Actually, I don't think anybody ever found that.
And we had no idea that she was working with them. The only time her name came out was after the last robbery. Her name came to our attention, and I went and interviewed her with another agent, Mustang, and she lived in the Seattle area, not too far from where the banks were. And she was cooperative to a degree. My name is this. Yes, I know Scott Skurlock, this, the other thing, but never to the point where she admitted any involvement in this, such as working in the banks, providing inside information. That did not come up. And that's the last interaction we had with her. And then I found out when I started talking to Steve last year that she actually committed suicide some years later.
Oh, wow.
He had a business in Sun Valley, Idaho, and yeah, she would visit me. And when I was in Oregon in the prison there, every Thanksgiving Eve, she'd come up and visit me. She was like Scott was her soul.
Mhm.
They were lovers, and then they were close friends, and then commandants and partners, and then we all three became. And she just felt guilty that she was free and we weren't. He was dead. I was in prison. Then she couldn't take it anymore. I got a letter from her sister after I was in Sheridan, I think, in Oregon, and she wrote that she'd committed suicide and she just couldn't bear it anymore. It was sad. I mean, she was a beautiful young woman.
And she
really
was never
hard.
charged because you just didn't have enough on her, Shawn?
No, we had her name that came up. Allegedly, she was out there that last evening, but we had no way to prove that.
So how crazy was it though for you, Stephen, that shortly after Scott died, the treehouse fell down? I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? I
Well,
mean,
it took a minute. His girlfriend, who was the reason why all of this treehouse came about, is because Scott was fraying on the edges on this last robbery.
mhm.
And he never would. His girlfriend came up Thanksgiving Eve, the day we were on the robbery, and said, "You're crazy. You can't have this. You can't have this woman here at the treehouse. You can't have it." And we were arguing and screaming, almost fighting. I said, "You can't do it." And finally, I really, he's a stubborn man, and because it's his operation. I mean, it was mine too, but it was his, And he said, "It's going to be all right. It's going to." Oh my God, Well, that was one of the reasons why I had to, when I was in the hospital, shot up, and he's asking me these questions. I figured, one of his guns that he had, he never got rid of the serial number. For some reason, he bought it. He didn't have another person buy it for him. And that was in the car. I said, "Well, just run the damn serial numbers and get who it is. Don't ask me these questions."
Yeah.
And anyway, it comes and I go, "Man, they're going to go to that tree house. They're going to find it. They're going to get to the tree house no matter what. They're going to get to his property. And this girl's going to be up there and seeing what they did to us, ambushing us and shooting the hell out of us."
Mhm.
I said, "They'll kill her."
So we get to the property, and again, walking back to the treehouse, looking up at this structure, we did a call out. Anybody in the treehouse, come out now, FBI, hands up.
Mhm.
2 seconds later, this woman walks out of the treehouse onto the walkway. That was his girlfriend, who had shown up the night before to Seattle, flown in from Arizona
yeah.
to spend Thanksgiving with Scott.
Mhm.
Of course, Scott was, I think, supposed to pick her up at the airport. Of course, he wasn't able to do that.
Yeah.
So we bring her down, start talking to her about where's Scott, everything else. And she claimed she had no idea that he was robbing banks. He was getting money from probably something illegal, but she had no idea it was bank robberies.
Right.
Later
Wow.
that day, when we had the standoff at the camper that Scott was in, I had her brought back up to the scene to hopefully call into him and try and convince him to come out. Of course, at that point, it was too late.
So what about Hollywood I want to ask you, what is it about Hollywood that frustrated the FBI more than any other criminal that you chased? Was there one specific thing?
I would say how damn good he was. I mean, he just didn't make major mistakes. He made minor mistakes, but he planned again months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
He had his team, right? That was professional. They did their homework. I mean, he was again a very intelligent person, but I think he perfected his craft over those 4.5 years and up to the last robbery. So I think it was just the professionalism that showed in the planning that he put into it, the initiative he put into it. That all played into his success for, again, 4.5 years.
It was one of the other problems on the end of on our last robbery is when we did the small bank to get the ProNet tags. It was also when I arrived from New Orleans for this last job, I always go into Seattle and I monitor all the frequencies, and do the surveillance and, get back into it again. Well, when I went up there to start monitoring on the scanners, nothing worked. Everything was gone. You have your scanner programmed to the frequencies that you're working with. None of them worked. And I go back to Olympia. I go, what's going on? There's and they're not there. It's no longer there. So I ended up calling an electronics shop in Seattle, and they go, oh, well, they changed the fire department and the police all changed to a trunk system. I go, well, what's that? They go, well, they got like 26 channels, and it's just scanning all the time, nonstop, so that there's not a channel clogged up. If you got one frequency in a district and it's being used, somebody else can't call in. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Another emergency. Whereas this, they got 26 channels. So I said, yeah, we got a problem. So that's one of the reasons. That's the second reason why we took this little bank. It was in the same area. And then I could log in when I heard what frequency it came on. I could log that in and know that that's the frequency that I could log in on our big bank, because I couldn't risk having it scanning and then missing a call if it came out. You see what I'm saying?
Have you had any interest in I know you wrote this book. Show people the actual manuscript of the book, because most of the stuff that was in there, it's so massive that it couldn't make it into the book. Have you thought about, take a look at this, everybody. This is actual
single type pages. Look at single type, single space.
Whoa, those are single spaced pages.
Single
front
space,
and
and it's 500 pages here, single space, front and back.
Wow.
Now, that all doesn't say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, does it?
No, I mean this is in a prison cell, 8x12 prison cell.
My God.
Every day working.
Man.
I mean, I probably worked.
Had any
3
interest
hours
in a
day.
movie being made out of it? Have you thought
Well,
about
that's what this is what it's going to be. This is what it is. This is epic. This is a series. This is a 3-4 year series.
That
I mean,
would
there's
be
so
awesome
many
to do,
sub
actually.
There's so many sub stories in this, and to work with the director and a writer. I mean, I've got more stories that imagination can't pick out there, and I couldn't put it all in the book. There's a lot of humor in the book too, police humor, all kinds of things. When you read the book, you're living how to live a bank, how to be a bank robber. You hear when I'm in my car scanning, and when the police radio when the dispatch comes over, you're listening. You're reading the dispatch, what they're saying. You're listening to the police talking to the dispatch. You're in the bank with Scott. You're in the car with me. I mean, you go through the whole protocol, the whole saga of 4.5 years.
When I got the book last fall to read, I read through it the first time, but the only thing I was reading was descriptions of the robberies when they're actually doing the robberies. And I also flipped back and forth to my proffer when I interviewed Stephen for the plea agreement. The interaction that we had in first person, I'm reading this, go, how the hell do you remember what I said, what he said? And so I went back and read the book in entirety after that. Everything went on behind the scenes, but there's so much I didn't know before I read that book.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much,
So
and I didn't even know. Actually, one of the things was I had no idea that Stephen had been involved in so many robberies. Because back when I interviewed him, he'd been to like 5 or 6. He actually did about 16.
I did everyone but the first one. Everyone but the first one. Yeah.
What?
You see, because I knew my only card I had to play. Scott was dead. Okay, Mark knew nothing. My only card that I had to play was try to mitigate my culpability, try to lessen what it was. I made myself look like as much of an idiot as possible. I knew
that's the smart thing to do.
I knew that I only made $5,000 a robbery. is what I said. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
I said, that's it. You got $250,000. You only got $5,000.
I said, yeah. I said, what am I doing? I'm just in a car. I'm not doing anything. You know?
Yeah, right. This guy
That's
must be.
good.
you're
Okay.
like, he must
The
be
book
an
is
idiot.
composed. The book is composed. It goes in and out of time. So I use the proffer.
Mhm.
And you start off, and he's asking me these questions. He's going from one robbery to the next, okay? And he's asking me, okay, what happened here? And I tell him, and I'm telling him, you know, and you're reading it. And then after the proffer's over with, then I click back in time to 1992, whenever the robbery was. And then you really hear what really took place. So you see that I'm lying to the FBI and that what really takes place and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I
and
think. I mean, we got to get Netflix. Okay, so they made the documentary about what really happened, but we got to get them to make this like a Netflix original series or something. You know,
Well, one of the streamers has to. I mean, it has to be. I want a top-notch director and a top-notch writer.
Well, I have to ask, who do you guys want to play you in the movie?
There you go. Who you want to play? Like, let's say they make a movie, and then let's also say they make a series, because you know a lot of times they can make both. Who would you want to play you in the movie? Who would you want to play in the series?
I mean, I had it worked out, but you know, right? You know who Scott looked like when the actor was young? They looked exactly like was Mel Gibson.
Yeah,
Scott
you're
looks-
right with the hair and everything. Yeah.
Looked just like Mel Gibson, you know, and he would have been a great character for Scott, but he's too old. I mean, I can't recall now because you have to look at younger.
Well,
we were 40s.
I was 35 when this went down.
Yeah, so we have to get younger.
So I don't know
So
any
who would you
35-year
like to-
actors.
Yeah. So who looked right now? Who looks most like you when you were, you know, in your 30s at the time?
You know, I was thinking Ethan Hawke for me possibly at one point.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
You know, because I don't know if you've seen photographs of me when I was that age. I mean, I had some, you know, I looked a lot younger than I do now, you know. I mean, Scott and I were the same size, really. 5'10", you know, same build, same everything. You know, he had darker hair than I had, but we both
I
had.
think Shawn wants what you said you wanted The Rock to play you. Is that what The Rock is going to play you in
Rock is
the?
I'm a big professional wrestling fan, so why not?
There you go. That'd be awesome, right? The big. Yeah.
No, you know, one thing Shawn wasn't that the photograph in the newspaper, you know, that he's not one of these tough cops, you know, city cops or anything. I don't, you know, everything has its place. He's a real FBI agent, professional agent, objective, analytical, get to the point. You know, there's none of the in our sense, we acted the same way. There was not violence.
Mhm.
You know, the theatrics of having a gun, you have to show that. You have to do, you know, it's all part of it. But that's what kind of felt close to them. You know, with the Seattle police, it's their job to go out, and if they see it, they're going to shoot. They're going to shoot to kill. It's just the way it
Didn't you
is.
ever worry about somebody getting accidentally? What you had multiple people that were in this with you. What happens if one of them gets pissed off, or if somebody tries to come at them? You ever worry about you would go to prison for the rest of your life because that's felony murder. You're in the commission of a murder. I mean, did
What do
you
you
ever
mean?
worry
If someone were in the bank with Scott, what do you mean? I don't.
Like let's say even if you're the driver, if he goes and kills somebody, you're going to be charged with that.
Well,
also.
yeah, but I mean, that's not the look. Our whole modus operandi was if there's ever a confrontation,
Mhm.
just leave. You abort. There's no upside to shooting. There's no upside to fighting it out. Even in
you were never worried that something might happen because I
Or
would
maybe
that
a
would
citizen, a citizen that was armed. I mean, it's Seattle. But,
Yeah,
that
you
could
know,
have been
don't worry
that
about
he
that,
could.
or-
Yeah, but I don't think he would have pulled a gun to shoot. He
or if
wouldn't
it
have
was an
done that.
off-duty cop. And you got listen. A lot
Yeah,
of that is
all of that, I
involved here, too.
agree with you. It was always the case, and you know that's part of the surveillance we'd have. That was also one of the things that critical. The timing of the day. We learned never to go in from 11 to 12 to 12:30 or 1 because it's a busy time. It's lunch hour. People go to get cash. They go to the best time is very early or in the evenings.
You're going by
And,
percentages.
Yeah,
you're
or
going by
you know,
percentages.
3:00. We always tried to mitigate as much as possible any pedestrian.
What day was the best day?
Well, usually before the weekend, Thursday.
Usually, yeah, it was Tuesdays, Wednesdays,
Wednesdays.
Thursdays, typically around 5:30 in the evening, or maybe late
Well,
morning.
sometimes we did some early mornings, but
Yeah.
we refrained from that because in summers we're not the best because it was just too clear out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to have a
For our
different. You have
viewers,
to.
we are not giving you advice here, people. So don't.
No. You have to have different disguises. Different disguises. I would also trained his wardrobe, his different clothing he wear. You know, in the
That's
winter
cool.
cold, it's good in the Northwest because you could have hoodies and parkas and he could hide all of his stuff.
Well-
Whereas in the summer when it's hot, you know, he's got to have a sport coat.
Well, as Steven's saying that, we could have come up with a different moniker for him. Could have been the Converse Man,
Oh yeah.
because he wore Converse tennis shoes all the time.
In the
Not-
very beginning,
yeah.
until I told him to take them off,
Yeah.
until I had to.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's
Chuck-
good. Make
Chuck
him easily
Taylor's?
recognizable if you wear
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
The
Wow.
Chuck Taylor ones.
Yes,
the
Chuck Taylor,
Yeah, the
Yep.
short, the low cut.
low cuts.
I mean, we
yes.
went mountain climbing in those. Those are what he mountain climbed in. He didn't wear boots and all that. His Converse, he could run. He played basketball in them. That's what he felt flexible and free. I said, I don't care how free you feel. We're going to be unfree unless you get rid of those shoes. You know what I mean?
Were you and Mark good friends? Were you and Mark friends at all?
Yes, we were. He was closer to Scott. He was not a type of guy. He's a really warm guy. I like him, but he's just not the type of guy I like. He's not analytical. He's not like Scott and I were thinking. He's a worker. And
He's a
Scott,
soldier. He's a soldier.
a soldier.
Yeah.
And because of an intimidation of his size, and he's a mild mannered guy, and you know, but it's not his game. It's not.
Do you
I
guys
remember
ever
that.
get together and reminisce or talk about it and reminisce?
I was out in Colorado, wrestling Colorado. That's where he's at. I was out there visiting my brother, and he doesn't live far from my brother. Happenstance. It's all very weird, but he's on a horse ranch and he's taking
Yeah.
care of horses.
I've talked to him on the phone since then, and funny story. The first time I talked to him through a mutual acquaintance, hey, somebody here in the car wants to talk to you. Who's that? You'll find out. I get the phone. Who's this? Mark. I said, Mark who? Mark Biggins. Oh, okay. Well, this is Shawn. Yeah, I know. He said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing well. How are you? I said, I'm doing well. He was working. I can't remember what his job was at the time. He had been out of prison for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And he said, well, what are you up to? I retired from the FBI about 2 years ago. And he said, well, I retired from bank robbing too. So good for you.
Around the same time, yeah.
Yes, we're in the same career
The
path.
difference is you got a pension. He didn't.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. Yeah. No, he's a good man. But I don't know. He's just not a type of guy.
Well, I remember the first
makes
day
sense.
I sat down to talk to Mark for the plea agreement, and I brought another agent with me. And the first day, like the first 3-4 hours, we were talking about unrelated topics because he grew up in Minnesota, where I grew up, not too far from each other. So we had, a lot in common with Minnesota sports, fishing, outdoor stuff. So we were just chatting for a while. I remember taking the first break, and my partner goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean I'm doing?" He said, "Kim, you talked about the bank robberies." I said, "Exactly. We have things in common. We're building rapport here. We have plenty of time to get into that, later on."
Right.
I mean, when
He
in the
left
book,
for a while,
in my
right?
book,
He kind of went on his own way for a while, and you guys brought him back.
yeah, in the end, we had him do 2 robberies with us, and the second one he did. Well, it's a long story, but he did one, and then we sent him back to cat. He's a loose. He's like, I don't know how to explain it. He's not a baby Huey, he's not stupid. He's a smart guy, but he's just not focused in a way. He's
Yeah.
too friendly, too this and that, very loud. He speaks very loud, very deep voice. And then the last one, because we needed someone, because the size of the bank was such that Scott couldn't control the
We needed crowd
the
control.
vault.
Crowd control inside
Yeah.
the bank. Yeah.
He
Was
couldn't
that
be
the
in the
largest
vault.
bank you ever did?
Yeah, it was the largest, geographically the largest. Yeah.
I got to ask you both real quick though. Steven, this is something for you both to answer. Why is it always seem like the criminals are caught, after they say, all right, this is going to be my last one, I'm going to get out of the game, then they're caught? It seems to happen. Why is that?
Maybe it's God. Maybe it's destiny. If we'd have said, okay, if we had been more sober in our minds and not so convinced of ourselves and so in our successes, and especially when we did the small robbery and got rid of the ProNet tags and how easy that was, I figured, okay, it was just the end. It came to an end. The tension of your inner psyche builds up and builds up and builds up. But when we wanted to do a $5-10 million robbery at the end, which this bank probably had at least $5 to $7 million in it.
Wow.
And I don't know why. If it hadn't have been, we wouldn't. We wouldn't be here now. And
No, no,
the
but,
book,
but
the
it's
book
weird
wouldn't
just
have
how
been
it, how
written.
it seems to happen to a lot of serial criminals that happens, right at the end. Like they're like, all right, you know what? I just got to do one last one, then I'm going to get out of the game. As soon as they say that, it's like a thing that triggers, like somehow some small thing goes wrong.
I think before this last robbery, everyone on both sides had a feeling that this was going to be the end. I don't know,
Mhm.
because Scott was having things
He
in his head.
his emotional fray. He was fraying, and the tension was building up because when you create something like this, and you've gotten in your mind, and we both. This was 2.5 years before to evolve into the three bank robberies where we could really. I mean, we were surveillancing Federal Reserve banks in Tacoma, and I said, "You're crazy. There's no way we
Federal
can do
Reserve
some,
Bank.
yeah, there's no way we got to work on it." I go, "Yeah, we got to work on it."
That's
That's
a
right.
tougher target. But
Yeah,
what is this? What is this? What is this? Die Hard?
Yeah, I know it, but so you build this goal. If it wasn't like it came to the last, but this was what we were building for, and we developed. We got the technology of getting the transceivers. I purchased those on the East Coast and brought them out, and we had a vehicle that we're going to set up as a roving vehicle to be able to block, to jam the frequencies of Seattle. And all of this fell. They changed the frequencies. Everything changed. And yet we still did it. Okay, sober-minded, if this would have been in the beginning, yeah, we wouldn't have done it. We would have set back and figured something out.
And that's another thing, which you just said right there. A lot of times when they say it's the last time, then certain little things, kind of give them signs, like that with the frequencies changing or things like
Oh,
this.
God, yeah.
And right before that last robbery, I had a dream. People believe in dreams or not, right?
Mhm.
But I could see this camper in a backyard in my dream. I had no connection what that was about. But of course,
Wow.
days later, that's where Scott ended his life.
Yeah.
And that morning, Thanksgiving Eve day, I went to work because we typically got out early on a holiday break.
Mhm.
My wife, as I'm walking out the door about 6 o'clock, whatever it was, said, "This is the day.
Yeah.
This is the day you're going to catch Hollywood." And I kind of looked at her, I go, okay.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
things were coming to our minds, not just mine, my wife's mind, and things going on with these guys that seemed to be coming together.
We were getting closer and closer, and we didn't know it.
We didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
the
you guys were,
Sims-
headed
your
on a
wife is-
collision course.
Yeah,
Well,
the
that's
symbology, the
time
beautiful
that,
symbology. When I look at Hollywood, he spent his life creating this symbol, this beautiful, incredible treehouse, freedom,
Mhm.
pure, creativity, just everything you could imagine as a human being wanting in your fantasy. And then he dies in a cold, musky, dank, old plastic cover over, tablecloth cover over to hide in a camper.
The irony
I mean,
is incredible.
The irony is just so profound that to me it's divine.
And
It is.
I look at the whole thing as it was meant to be. I never felt like we were there on our own. I always felt we were being pushed somehow.
No regrets.
Yeah.
No regrets, Stephen.
Oh, I don't regret a minute of it. It changed my life. I'm a better man for what I did. I mean,
And you
just have to say
wouldn't
it.
be here now also if you had
No,
you
I
had you
mean,
not
my
done
life
that.
would have gone the way it would have gone, but would I want to take a chance and roll the dice to see where it would have gone? I mean, I was an artist exhibiting and doing all that, but what?
let me
So-
share one story because
Go
I'll
ahead.
say I knew Hollywood. I don't know Scott Skurlock.
Mhm.
Never met him, never talked to him, which was something I wanted to do because if this had come to a point I had a chance to sit down with him like I did with Steve and Mark, what would you have said to him? I said, well, I would have shook his hand, said, hell of a job. It's over with. Let's talk. Right.
That's actually one of the things I was going to ask you is
Yeah.
are you frustrated by the fact that you never got to talk to him?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. But a story that gets me into his mind was at that camper that day.
Mhm.
He was held up overnight. About 2:30 is when the call came in to the police that somebody was in this camper in the backyard. They show up. They approach the camper. They put pepper spray or gas into the camper. At that point in time, they heard a gunshot. They retreated back to cover. They put 42 or 44 rounds into this camper.
Jeez.
That's where the standoff happened. And 4 hours later, gas gets shot into it again. And then finally, we made entry in the camper. And I had taken photographs from his house because we didn't have pictures of Scott. And when I went in with the team, I looked down underneath the table and I had a picture of Scott. And I looked down at him. Scott. But a story that was shared to me by one of the police detectives, no, sergeant that came to the scene when that shot came out and they retreated back after the fact, he said, I appreciate that man. I respect that man. Why? Because he could have shot me. He chose to take his own life. He could have killed me easily.
That's true.
And didn't do it.
See, that's who that man was. When you asked me earlier, would he ever commit suicide? He didn't want to commit suicide. No, you know, yeah, it was maybe closer to a samurai effect. I don't know. I don't want to go there, but he would have never just shot a cop. It would have never come about. It was never, or an innocent person. It was never part of the game. It was either success or failure. And it ended up being what it was.
Well, at the end, you guys, it made, well, not at the end, but you guys always knew that if it went bad, it was every man for himself.
Absolutely. We all said, before we did this robbery, we said, listen, there's too much forensic connection between us. So if one gets caught, we're all caught. Just do what you got to do to get out of it alive.
And is that why he was able to jump out of the van and take off?
Yeah, because we were both shot up in the back. He knew it was over. It was shot up in the back, and the police were there, and his only chance of getting out was to go. You know,
do you think he had no intention of ever? Here's my thing: he could have surrendered right there, knowing it was over, but he chose not to. Was it that he just said, I'm not going to hurt anybody, but I'm not going to be taken alive, basically?
Exactly. He said, he always told me in intimate moments when we'd be hiking, never let them decide your life. Never let anyone else in your life, never let anyone decide your life for you.
So you took that as him saying that he's he's never going to go to prison.
No, because he always carried the PPK on his ankle, saying that if it all has to be, I have that at least for my last.
Oh, and that's what that was for. Okay.
Yeah, for suicide, if he lost his gun or whatever. No, it was never in his intention ever to even think of that. I mean, we respected the police. We respected the FBI. Shawn, he should have been an FBI agent or CIA agent. He studied Mossad. He studied CIA. The Russian KGB back in the day. I mean, this was his mind. This was what he was, and what can I say? I was affected by it. I didn't pursue it like he did.
Well, I got to ask, Shawn, had Scott surrendered, based on everything that you've seen with like Steven and everybody else, how much time do you think he would have actually gotten for his responsibility in the crimes, for what he did?
Well,
I asked that question too. Yeah.
So the situation was they were indicted on 4 counts: bank robbery, use of a weapon during the bank robbery, assault on a fellow officer, and use of a weapon on assault on a fellow officer. Now, we talked about the shooting before. If the circumstances weren't as they are, discussing what happened that night, it would strictly have been the bank robbery. So I think they didn't deserve as much time as they got.
That was pretty heavy. Yeah, I got to say. That was a lot of
21 years and 3 months.
Yeah.
For getting shot up.
Yeah.
And I think
I think the shots should have taken some years off, right?
You say, listen, boys, let's get with the program here. You know what I mean?
Whatever the charges that would have been, he would have received the same amount.
Really? Even with him being like the main culprit and the one that had the gun in there?
Conspiracy to bank robbery, it doesn't matter.
How come they weren't charged with like possession of a firearm or
use
like
of a firearm?
They
were.
They were
charged
with. Were any of you guys previous felons at any point before that?
No, none of us. No.
Scott had been arrested 3 times during the years of these robberies. Minor offenses.
Minor, just misdemeanors.
Yeah. Mischief, something.
Was he
fingerprinted?
Because
obviously, as you know that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
No. Was he during those arrests? Was he fingerprinted?
I assume so.
Scott? Scott or what?
Scott would have been. Yeah.
He was printed
if he was arrested.
Yeah, usually, if you're arrested when they book you, they usually.
We had nothing. We had nothing compared to.
No prints.
You had no prints. Wow. No. You know when Stephen, when people, I know people are going to say to me, and they're going to, as I'm the former law enforcement officer, what does he expect? He was robbing banks, and he seemed surprised that he got shot. I mean, people are going to say that. Yeah. How do you?
No, I didn't feel surprised that I got shot. We always knew this was what would, if it was going to end, that they would. This was how it was going to end. They were going to shoot to kill us. We knew that, or we assumed that. assumed it as much as we knew it.
So
But-
tell everybody what it felt like then. If you're being shot and you thinking, okay, they're gonna shoot to kill me. I mean, the first time you get hit, the second, what does that feel like? Not just the pain, but the thoughts.
Yeah, to me, the most dramatic thing was the end. When you're facing a wall, it's the end. You can't go anywhere else.
Mhm.
Yeah, the pain was something because they shot my left arm, and it must have been I don't know, a 45, or maybe the bullet was splayed coming through the back of the van,
Mhm.
because the scar I have is a much bigger than a 9mm.
Yeah.
And the arm just started flying in front of me. I mean, I thought they blew it off. I mean, I screamed in the car. This is when Scott bailed. I screamed. I said, they shot my fucking arm off, the faggot son of a bitches, you know? I mean, screamed it like vociferously in the van.
Yeah.
And then that's when he pulled up, and then they shot again, and they shot my left arm, and my hand was clawed up like this. Yeah, it's the end, and it's like your whole
But
life.
did you ever think oh my God, they're gonna kill me right now?
I didn't even care. If I'd had arms, I probably would have acted. When the shooter, Mike McGann, was the shooter that was ambushed us.
Mhm.
You know, he comes up with a shotgun and his dog, and I'm on the ground, laying on the ground. I probably would have, you know, I didn't have a gun on me, but I probably, just to get it over with, I probably would have, if I'd have had arms, acted like I had a gun. So he'd have
Yeah.
shot me because he had the gun. He wanted to shoot me. He wanted to kill me. I mean, that was the guy was a crackhead. He was like on crystal meth or something.
But what does that feel like, knowing that this man, if you move, he wants to kill you?
I didn't care at that time. It didn't matter to me. I mean, I looked at this guy. I call him the albino because he's like this white, pinkish face, white hair at that time. And he's just crazed. He had his dog. The dog I liked. The dog was called Beethoven. You're going to read it in the book. Okay.
Cool.
I liked him. I was sitting there and I could kind of make comical jokes with him, but he was there with his shotguns, you know, over me like I'm a threat. I don't have any friggin' arms. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you know, I don't know. It goes beyond it. My thoughts then were more beautiful. I started seeing visions. And,
Oh, wow.
you know, I looked back in the van, and there was just like this beautiful dance, because all of the bullet holes and all of the smoke from inside the van, and
Mhm.
just like flittering particles. And it was so beautiful. And you saw this mound of money. And then I started hearing all this angelic music in my head. It was like
Wow.
overtones of this beautiful choir, not earthly music. It was something, you know, unearthly. You know what I mean? And it was just like God. It was like love. It was beautiful. I felt
Well,
beautiful.
One
That's
thing,
And then
pretty amazing.
Shawn showed up, huh?
We
What
got
Mike
time for
began-
one more question, Jay.
yeah, Mike McGann, he in the documentary said if Steven's moving his lips, he's lying. That's his take. Obviously, he's got his side of
Well,
the
he's been
story.
saying that from the beginning.
Right. Now, I think Shawn can maybe answer this. Shawn knows now how you guys were, that you didn't want to kill anybody, you didn't want to shoot anybody, you certainly didn't want to shoot at the police. But at the time, they don't know that.
No,
So
I agree with that.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. No, we treat all,
It's true.
armed
Yeah.
bank robbers. Yeah,
Yeah.
treat them with potential for violence. Definitely. No,
Absolutely.
no doubt. Now,
Go
but
ahead.
at the time, no. But I want to make one comment about we're talking about Detective McGann
Mhm.
and watching the Netflix show and seeing some of the inconsistencies in the actual story. Mike took a lot of credit for things he did in that investigation, which he never did.
Mhm.
And his participation in that investigation, 4.5 years, basically boiled down to the last 4 minutes during the pursuit and the shooting. Everything else he said in that show was false.
Well, he
Wow.
seemed like the kind of guy that would do that kind of thing, because it kind of came off as disingenuous when he was talking about how they lifted the rifle first, so that's why he shot. Guys, real quick, I'm sorry, I want to give you guys just a couple of minutes to tell people where they can get your book. I want to put it up real quick because we've only got a couple minutes left. So I want you to tell people about your book. Where can they get it? And you know, and anything else you want to
Okay.
tell them, if you guys want to tell them
Yeah,
anything else.
you can get it online, Amazon online. Just type in my name and the Treehouse, the true story of the bank robbery. Or you can get it Barnes and Noble online as well. There's Kindle, and audio will be released soon. I don't have the link yet for that, but it's coming out. So
That is wonderful.
it's a beautiful book. It's an interesting book. It's not written in a true crime genre. It's a voyage, and you learn our personalities, who we are through my dialogue, through our events, through our escapades, through the planning, and it unfolds. It goes in and out of time, and it unfolds into the very end.
I think that's
So the-
better than a true crime story. It's more like a novel, but a true
Yeah.
novel, you know?
Yeah,
I think that's much better.
The book begins in the ending at the shootout, and then
Oh, wow.
and then it goes into then it goes in, and then finally gets to proffering, and that's when you start going into what really happened. You know what I tell the FBI, and then it has the ending. And people may ask, how did I know the ending? Well, his girlfriend, I asked her when I was in prison. I said, "Can you please write me as much as you can remember all the characters, the police, all the different individuals, reporters, and as much of the dialogue as you can tell me what they asked, what you said." And she wrote me about a 25 page letter of all the different people.
Wow.
So between that and newspaper articles, when I was in prison, I was able to create a dialogue and create the ending to what it was, pretty accurate, actually. So
That's amazing. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to come here and talk to us, tell us your story, tell the audience, the things that the Netflix documentary didn't cover. And we really hope that there's going to be, end up being a film and, a series. And I'd love to see, people play you guys in the show, especially now that we've actually met you guys. It'd be so cool. I'm going to go back and watch the documentary just so I can say, you know what, I met those guys.
Hey, you two are wonderful. This
fantastic.
is beautiful what you've done. You have a great presentation.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
great.
And,
You guys
Jack,
were wonderful too. It was a lot of fun, I gotta say.
Jack, I have to ask Shawn one more, and we'd be remiss if we didn't.
2 minutes
We have
left.
a former FBI agent here on Cash Patel, A, B, C, D, or F up to right now, real quick.
Well, I'm retired. So during my working career, I would have to say my favorite director was Louis Freeh.
Okay.
Fantastic person. Met him a couple times. I can speak directly about Louis Freeh.
Well, how about
Fantastic.
just the job he's doing from a former FBI agent's perspective? A, B, C, D,
Early?
or F.
I think he's doing very well.
Okay.
Grade
Excellent.
level. I mean, he's doing a fantastic job. I think the Bureau is taking a turn in the right direction and doing a fantastic job, which we always have.
Especially recently, it's gotten
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot. I gotta say, it's gotten a lot better.
Rank and file, I still work with occasionally. Have very good, high respect to the man. I think he's doing a fantastic job.
Very
Thank you.
good. Excellent, guys. So thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you guys on again
Please.
some other time because you guys are a lot of fun, I gotta say.
Hey, just contact us or our agent, and we'd love to come on again and go deeper if you need to. Love
That
it.
would be great. That would be great. Thank you guys so
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thank you,
Really
Jack.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
Take
Jay.
care, guys. Take care.
All right, you have a great night.
You also.
Thank you. Jay, tell me what are your impressions, man? We got like 1 minute left. That was awesome. I gotta say.
Oh, that was great. No, great guys. I mean, listen, when I've made a lot of arrests in my career, I've never had the chance to sit down with somebody I arrested, but I was also never involved as a detective in a case like this. I
Mhm.
couldn't even imagine. I mean, what the relationship, I think it's a beautiful thing that they have a good
I
relationship
think it's
now.
awesome. Are you kidding? How often do you see that?
You don't. And one thing about Scott, that the shame of it is he could have been an asset if he had survived to to them, and to say, hey, this is the thing, like a Frank Abagnale did.
But at that point, when you're talking about you're going to get like probably at least 20 years, you're thinking, I can't spend 20 years of my life in prison.
yeah, and you
So,
watch the
I mean-
documentary, he had no intention of being taken alive.
No.
way.
But I'm glad that Steven didn't have a gun that day, so that way he's still here now and able to do that, because otherwise the story may never have even been told the way it should have been told. So
Listen.
guys, make sure everybody go out and get The Treehouse. I'm going to put it up here one more time. Check it out. It's The Treehouse, the true story of Hollywood the Bank Robber by Stephen Myers. And again, I want to thank Shawn Johnson. I want to thank Stephen Myers for coming on the show. We'll have to have them back again another time to we can go in deeper, ask some more questions, and it was a lot of fun. Real quick, everybody, I want to say make sure you guys visit maxassociates.etsy.com, the #1 place for USA Pride gifts and patriotic apparel. I got the QR code up here in the top right. You can scan it, or you can go to maxassociates.etsy.com and get the best 20% off any order of $20 or more, and free shipping anywhere in the United States. Make sure you guys also follow us on X, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, Instagram, and you can follow him on TikTok at @Penionsberry with an A, and we're on X, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, Instagram, Secret America TV. It's the same screen name for every single social media site, and we are live every weekday, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Jay, you got anything else to say before we go?
No, man. Awesome show. Great guests, great guys. I'm glad I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we did.
Absolutely. And Steven and Shawn are still in the background. If you guys want to hang out for just a minute, right after we play the outro, we'll talk to you guys for just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to let you guys go. We're going to let everybody go. It was a great show. It was an absolutely great show. And I really enjoyed this, guys. That was a lot of fun. For Jay Gatling, I am Jack Danger. Thank you for watching Secret America.
You've been listening to Secret America.